listening to the Life Edit Project podcast, where busy, ambitious high achievers get the tools they need to fight overwhelm and overthinking with balance, self-mastery, and a positive mindset. I'm your host, Elizabeth Burrows. I'm serving up bite-sized truth bombs in a judgment-free zone based on my perspective as a life coach, wife, mom, and recovering overachiever. We keep it real over here, which usually means some combination of insightful, entertaining, and a hot mess express. So, if you're looking for perfection, look elsewhere. But if you're still with me, let's dig into this week's episode. Good day, good people. Welcome to the Life Edit Project podcast. I am your host, Elizabeth Burrows, and I am super excited today. We're doing something a little different. If you've been following me this season, then you know that this is a very special episode for two reasons. One, maybe three reasons. One, this is the very last episode of season 1, and we are doing a recap of everything that we've talked about during season 1. So I'm super excited for that. Number 2, this is also special because I'm not just going to be sitting here talking to myself today. I have a friend joining me, and I'm very excited to introduce her in just a moment. But the third thing that's super special about this podcast episode, this is actually the very first video podcast episode that I'm recording. Yes, that's right. If you are the kind of person that likes to watch podcasts on YouTube, this is the first episode of the Life Edit Project podcast that you will be able to see on YouTube. So I'm very excited about that. Listen, I don't know how this is going to go. You're going to get what you're going to get, people, but I'm trying to make this a good time for all of us, okay? Okay, so with that being said, let me introduce my friend so that we can get this party started. We're going to have a good conversation. So today I have joining me my amazing friend, Gabrielle Smith. So let me tell you a little bit about her. She is a wife, mom, and a business mindset coach. So yeah, she's not just a friend, she's also a coach, which means she's an amazing human. And she lives to help other women walk boldly in their purpose. And I'm sure she's going to tell us a little bit more about that and what she does. But I asked her to join me on this episode for season 1 recap because I kind of consider her like my big sister in coaching. So she's been coaching and she's well-trained. She's got her certification through the Life Coach School, and she is doing her thing. And she has been following me since I started the podcast. So I know she's been listening, and I've been getting some feedback from her, and I'm just really excited to have her join me. And we do a lot of kiki, and so I think this is going to be a fun conversation. Gabrielle, thank you so much for joining me. Say hi to the people.
Hey, people. Thank you so much for having me. Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. Yes, and I've been listening to it from the very beginning when you first popped out, and I'm so excited to be here and do this recap episode with you.
Yes. Okay, yes. So listen, y'all, when I first told everybody that I was going to be starting the podcast. So I didn't do like this long drawn out launch thing. I just was over here quietly making moves. And the day before I dropped the trailer, I went on Instagram and I was like, okay, I have an announcement. Let me tell my close friends. And so I made the announcement in my stories to my close friends list, and Gabrielle like DM'd me and she's like, why am I not on your close friends list? She's like, I want to know.
It was so true. I felt offended. I'm like, what? I thought we were like BFFs on IG. Like, what's happening? I didn't know about this.
And I was like, my bad. That's clearly an oversight. So I added her to the list. She got the announcement, and you were really so encouraging. And I was like, oh, yay. Like someone else thinks this is a good idea.
Oh, yes. I know like what a big deal it is to just put ourselves out there the way that we do on a daily basis, and to take it to the next level and put a podcast out there and commit to showing up week after week and, subjecting ourselves to all the judgment and criticism and all the things that go along with that. I know that that's a big deal. So I'm always here to encourage and support and however I can. So I love it. I love what you're doing.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Like it meant a lot to me, and I was like, okay. So it kept me going, and I was also nervous about just telling folks what I was getting ready to do because there was a part of me that was thinking, maybe I should have given folks like several weeks notice, like drummed up some support or some demand. But the reason I didn't was because I was getting in my own head. I was starting to really overthink and overplan everything. And I actually had another coach friend, Inez, who told me, no, stop, just go ahead and launch. And so I just went ahead and did it. And for me, that meant just like, don't talk about doing it, just do it and then talk
Mm-hmm.
when you have something to share. So that's literally what I did. So yeah, you've been rocking with me since day one of this podcast.
Yes.
I feel
Yes.
very,
Yes.
very grateful.
Yeah.
So I want to just listen. I really don't know what we're going to talk about in this episode because I just want to recap. So
Yeah.
season one, I did 20 different episodes. And so it's so funny. Okay. So maybe just kind of a general arc. So all of these episodes were unique episodes that I created where I wanted to talk about different things,
Mm.
with the exception of episodes 10 and 20, which were Ask Me Anything episodes. So I decided before I launched the podcast that I didn't just want to be, a talking head talking into the void, and that I wanted to make sure that I was incorporating some type of feedback and some type of conversation between me and my listeners, however many there was going to be, because I had no idea if the people were going to
Mm-hmm.
listen and if the people were going to talk back. But I
Yep.
decided in advance to go ahead and, tie some Q&A into the season. So I did that with episodes 10 and 20. So I didn't pick the topics for those. My listeners picked the topics for those episodes. And then I had episode 11 and episode, I think, 17,
Mm.
where I had my first two guests, which happened to be my husband and my daughter. So, with the exception of those two episodes, every single episode has been just me talking into my microphone. And yeah, so it was a little unnerving to kind of commit in advance to finding enough things to say to show up for 20 consecutive weeks and
Yeah.
just talk to the people.
Yeah. And I love that you did it. I think that's the part that holds a lot of people back where they're just like, ooh, like, am I going to have to commit to this week after week or how many episodes? But 20 episodes, like, and it went by so fast.
It
Did it
did.
go by fast for you?
It did. Like every time I looked up, I was like, wow, like I'm already at episode 5. Wow, I'm at this episode 10. What? Like this end of the season is here. Yeah, it was like those weeks just kept on flying by. So it wasn't as hard as I expected it to be. So, and I'll say that, look, anybody who knows me knows that having something to say is not a problem that I
Yeah.
have. No one has ever accused me of running out of words to say.
Yes. Yes.
So, starting a podcast and like letting this medium just be like me talking and
Mhm.
saying what I have to say felt really natural. It's one of the reasons why I decided to do a podcast is because, I'm already on social media and I do live streams and all that kind of stuff. And I do posts. And I have like a blog on my website that I don't update nearly as often as I should. Right. So I have all these other places where I share my thoughts. But I think just using my voice
Mhm.
feels the most authentic to me. And, as a coach, I think the more we can remove the barriers between like who we are and what we teach, it makes it easier for our audience and our potential clients to get to know who we are.
Yeah.
And, I literally believe that my voice as a coach is part of what makes me different and sets me apart from all the other coaches out there in the internet world.
Agreed, 100%. And I think it goes back to what I talk about a lot, which is it's like owning who you are and owning your life experiences and bringing that to the forefront of like what you do, how you coach, how you teach, how you view the world and all of that, bringing that to the forefront. And then that allows people to connect and get to know you like on a deeper level. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's actually a really good segue into episode 1 of the season.
Yeah.
So it's so funny when I started planning the episode, I actually meant episode 1 in my head. I was calling it episode 0 because
Zero. I remember that.
so in my head, I was like, this is a throwaway episode. It's not really part of the season. This is just kind of the prelude to my podcast, introducing folks to who I am, letting them hear my voice, and just telling them what they can expect of me. And two things happened. So I recorded the episode, and I I was at this co-working space, and there happened to be this lady who is a podcast manager. She works with, tons of clients with all different kinds of podcasts. And I was like, "Oh, guess what? I'm getting ready to start a podcast." And I was like, "Look at what I'm doing. I have no idea what I'm doing, but here's my little plan." And so I like showed her what I was doing. And she was like, "Wow, like your approach is amazing for someone who doesn't know what you're doing. Like you're doing better than you thought." I was like, "Oh, amazing." And then she was like, "Just one comment, one piece of feedback." And I was like, "Yes." She was like, "There's no such thing as episode 0." And I was like, "No, no, 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 no. You don't understand. She's like, "No, no, 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 no. There is no such thing as episode 0. It's episode 1." She was like, "It is going to count when you upload. Like, it's going to be the
It's
first
going to be
episode. It's
one.
episode 1."
Right. When you
So I
get your
was,
counts, and it's not like it's going to subtract that first episode or anything like that. It's like, and what even is a throwaway episode? What?
yeah. It doesn't exist. And so let me tell you what happened. So I had pre-recorded this episode, right?
Yeah.
And it was, shorter than, and on purpose, it was shorter than like the rest of the episodes were going to be. So I think that one was about 15 minutes or so.
Yeah.
And then I put it out. When that episode dropped, like people were responding, and actually had really good feedback from that episode. And I had two different friends of mine who also happened to be mothers reach out to me to say that they were so touched by the episode, and they had actually listened to it like with their daughters,
Mm.
and it was changing how they thought about their relationship with their daughters. And I was like, okay, so here I am thinking that this is a throwaway episode, an episode that doesn't count. And here this episode is having an impact that I didn't even that I wasn't even aiming to have.
Wow.
Right. Wow. And I was like, okay, note to self, everything counts. Everything counts. And so it just, with my very first podcast episode, I realized that I had discounted myself.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And I was like, I got to stop doing that.
Yeah. ASAP. ASAP. Right.
ASAP.
Oh, no, I love that. I love that. And I love that you thought it was a throwaway episode, and then other people saw it as like life-changing, like enough for them to even like you said, listen to it with their daughters and all that. Because I remember you going real deep about um your perfectionism and like where it
Yes.
started, like how far back it went, and people could relate to those stories. And like I have a 16-year-old, so I can like, listen to it with her, talk about it with her, like to try and catch some of those things and just kind of put it into her awareness at this point.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that was really fun. And I think that was like the first way my podcast surprised me
Mm,
this season. So I'm gonna say that.
I love it.
Yeah. Okay. So you have listened to the whole season.
Yep.
Do you have a favorite episode? Because literally, these are the things that no one writes in to tell me. Oh, I love this one episode. Like no one says that unless they
Yeah.
write a review. But yeah, what did you think?
So, well, how dare you ask me about my favorite, as if I could pick one. So I have one though. I have my favorite. And my favorite is episode 11, the one with your husband.
Yeah.
It was my absolute favorite for a few reasons. One, because that episode, he reminds me so much of my husband. Oh my gosh. It's like playing Russian roulette with the whole
Yes.
thing.
You never know
So
what you're going to get.
you don't, you don't know. It's a risk. But hey, since we're entrepreneurs and we're taking risks every day, why not just throw that in the mix?
Yep.
So yeah, so that's the first piece, but also like it kind of gave us a more a look into your love story, which I loved, like how y'all met and hearing about all of that stuff. And then the other piece was um, a different side of you that we don't get to see in the other episodes, right? So we got to see a more personal side of you and I guess a perspective from a personal side too, as well, and not just from the podcast and your teachings and all of that. So I loved that. And then just seeing y'all interact with each other, and y'all
Yeah.
been together for a while, and I've been with my husband for a long time too. So just like I'm always interested and like curious about how other couples, especially those who've been together for a while, like interact and like the different banter. It was just a different cool episode to like throw in. So I have to say that one was my favorite. And I have a close second too.
Ooh, okay. I'm gonna ask you about that one in a second.
Yes.
Yeah. So episode 11, I also enjoyed that episode. I don't, so it's not actually my favorite over the whole season.
Yeah.
But I will say this, when I listened back to episode 11, okay, first of all, let me tell y'all, I did probably the most editing of any podcast episode
Of course you did.
with that episode. but I mean, not because I was trying to censor my husband. Like I wasn't trying to censor him, but one, like because it was my first episode with a guest, it was longer than the rest, and I was trying not to have the episode go on forever. So
Yeah.
I did my best to trim out just kind of the dead spaces, and that was trying when you're juggling the air between two people. Right.
Mhm.
So it was just a different rhythm. So it took something different. But here's the other thing that nobody knows. So my husband and I were recording the episode from my living room table. And right, yeah. So, and we'll talk about behind the scenes in a minute. Okay, sorry, y'all. There is some little noise outside. I don't know if y'all can hear that or not, but it's distracting me. So, okay, so I recorded that episode from my living room table, which is not where I normally recorded because I was like, I don't know the logistics of trying to record with a person who is in the room next to me and not someone who's like on a computer, on Zoom. So I was like, let's just both of us sit down here and we'll record. So that's what we did. But literally in the middle of this episode, so my husband's back was to our patio. We have these sliding glass doors and we hear this strange noise. And it was going crazy. We're like, what is this noise coming from our patio? And so he gets up, he opens the blinds, and there was this giant iguana. Y'all,
I forgot you're in like South Florida. Oh my
I'm in
gosh.
South Florida. The iguanas are out of control. This was like a giant iguana. It was at least 5 feet long, at least.
Oh my gosh.
And it was like knocking on our door trying to come in. We were like, what is happening right now? So it started making a little bit of noise at first, and we were trying to ignore it. And then I was like, okay, this is actually going to be too loud for the recording. So we had to kind of pause. And so when we went to investigate, we discovered this huge iguana. Y'all, it was a whole ordeal. Like we had to recompose ourselves and everything. Like we had to frighten the iguana away. Like it was a lot. It was a lot.
Oh my goodness, that's hilarious. The things that go on behind the scenes.
So no one knew that. That's a little bit of behind the scenes trivia. So that's some of the fun stuff. But yeah, I had a good time with that conversation. I think my husband really surprised me because there were actually things that were important for him to say. So even though we didn't plan our conversation and he didn't really plan any questions for me, once I started asking him questions, he got very intentional with the way he responded because he really had a perspective that he was trying to get across. And so once I started editing the episode, he was like, "Can I listen to the original first? Like, let me see what you cut out." Because he wanted to make sure that what he said was what he said and that it was coming through.
Yes, yes. I love that. He's like, yeah,
Yeah.
don't be censoring me or any of that jazz. I love it.
Yeah.
I love
So
it.
so that was funny. But tell me, what was your second favorite episode?
Well, the close second was the one with your daughter. It was
Yeah.
with Naomi. It was so I told you this, like I would have never, like if I didn't know, I would not have known she was 9.
Yeah.
Like she speaks and talks and just have a perspective that just seems so advanced for a 9-year-old. And so I really, really enjoyed just witnessing the relationship that y'all had with each other, and like the actual questions, like what's it like for me to be your mom, like asking her that and hearing her perspective and her, her honesty around that was really good. So I enjoyed that was my close second one. I had a hard time making the choice there.
Yeah, she's pretty amazing as a kid.
Yeah.
Lots of folks comment on how advanced she is. She's been this way for quite a while. I won't say she came out of the womb like this, but I think she's always surprised me. Like by the time she was 3 years old, I just decided, okay, I'm no longer going to be surprised by what comes out of her mouth, because
Yeah.
up until then it was just like, just the things that she was learning and demonstrating and the questions that she would ask. Listen, my baby was 2 years old when she was making logical arguments that were like defeating me in
Yeah.
debates. Like, and I was like, I don't like losing arguments to 2-year-olds.
Oh my
That
gosh.
that's really embarrassing, right?
Yeah.
And just watching kind of the sophisticated way her mind worked. And of course, she was using her toddler logic, but
Yeah.
yeah, she's always been advanced. And so I just decided at a point, I'm no longer going to be surprised. Like, she just gets to be amazing. And
Mhm.
I'm going to
Mhm.
accept that as like normal,
Yeah.
and I'm just going to roll with it and try to feed it. So, yeah, I was actually surprised with some of the questions that she asked me, like, because I only kind of mentioned it to her once.
Yeah.
That you can come up with some questions if you want, if you have questions for me, but I didn't like nag her about it. I didn't, it wasn't like a homework assignment that I had
Yeah.
given her. So when we showed up, like, she had a notebook that she had written her questions in, and she was like ready. And I was like, this is so adorable. She's
Oh
so
my
cute.
god. She's like, I'm prepared. I'm
She
ready.
was prepared. She's so cute.
I
Yeah.
love
So yeah, I love that. Oh, here's something the listeners should know. It was her idea to be a guest on my podcast.
it.
She
How
asked.
did that come about? What'd she say?
So when I first told her that I was getting ready to start a podcast, first of all, she's my biggest cheerleader. She's like, "Way to go, mom. I'm so proud of you. This is amazing." I mean, she just went on and on and on. And then after a couple of days when I started, she would ask me like, "How's it going with your podcast? Like,
Mhm.
what are you doing with it?" And I would kind of share with her my plans. And then she turns to me and she says, "Can I be on your podcast?" And so I
Oh.
looked at her and I was like, "Oh, that's something you want to do? Sure." Sure. I thought it would be an interesting conversation. So then it was up to me to figure out like what my angle was going to be.
Yeah.
And I just decided to unleash, her, because she's awesome.
Yeah.
And so then when my husband got home that particular day, he walks in the door. She says, "Guess what, Dad? I'm going to be on Mom's podcast." So he turns to me and he says, "Well, how come you get to be on the podcast and I don't get to be on the podcast?" And I said, "You want to be on the podcast?" Like, and he was like, "Yeah, I want to be on the podcast." So I was like, "Okay, it's settled. Both of you will be on the podcast in this season." I said, "Just let me get the first half of the season under my belt so that I can figure out what I'm doing. And then
Yeah.
I'll come back for y'all." So that's how that all happened. They
I
invited
love
themselves
it.
onto the show.
I love it. And look, it turns out to be my two most favorite episodes. So I love
Yeah.
it. I love it.
And so that episode with my husband is one of like the top 5 most popular episodes.
Nice.
So yeah, that's really
So
interesting.
other people agree with me. I love it.
Other
I
people,
love it.
either that or other people are nosy and they just want to,
Well, that too.
which I
Yeah.
am fine with. Look, be
Because
nosy.
the title of that one was what? Something about
Ooh,
marriage.
marriage is hard and it might not be for you.
Yeah, buddy. Yeah. Well, there you go. People are just nosy. Could
Yeah,
be that too. But it's actually it's a good topic though. I like that topic. That would make me listen
yeah,
for sure.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was really good. Okay.
I like it.
So we talked about your favorite episode. So you're a listener. So I'm really, and you're a coach. So I really want to like dig in. So during the season, I also introduced, like, I gave a lot of my own like unique definitions of different things. And I introduced some concepts. Like, was there a favorite concept that I talked about during the season?
Listen, so I have to say this because I was going to say that I don't know if it's a concept per se, this first one, but it's actually that. It's actually that you have Coach Elizabeth's definitions. I love that. I think that is genius. I think that that comes up a lot, for people in general, but also in coaching containers. I think I'm just making sure we're all on the same page. Like we can
Hmm.
assume that your definition of this is the same one that I have, but like just to make sure we're all on the same page, let me tell you what I'm thinking in terms of this. And especially since you're kind of one direction with the podcast, you kind of have to give it from your perspective and then get everybody on the same page as you. So that by far is my favorite. And I have 2 favorite definitions
Ooh,
that
yeah.
you put out there. So the first one was perfectionism. Your definition
Ooh,
for perfectionism, I was like, that is genius. I have it. The
ooh.
practice of trying to prevent or eliminate differences, flaws, or shortcomings in order to attain or demonstrate quality and or value.
Mhm,
That's I was like, oh my gosh, that is
mhm.
genius. So I'm curious. And then the other one before I say that, like self-care. What's the other one? Your definition for
Yeah.
self-care. Any action or activity that you do or facilitate for yourself in service of your future well-being.
Yes.
I love that. Both of those. Those were right. I was like, that is perfect. The perfect way to describe it. Um, so I'm curious though, like, how do you, because most of us, I think, or a lot of us would just go to the go to the Googles, and we would just like type it in and we just like go with what's
Mhm,
there. And you
mhm.
mentioned before in one of your episodes that like some of them you look at and you're just like, oh, that's not quite, you know, it ain't quite hitting for me. So
Yeah.
yeah. So like what's that process like for you?
I think this is just a byproduct of the way my brain works.
Mm,
So I am a researcher by habit. I mean, I've said probably several times on the podcast this season, I'm a big old nerd, right? I
hmm.
love to learn. And so whenever and also I love information. And so whenever like a little sliver of information comes across my awareness or I get introduced to a concept, one of my favorite things to do is like, oh, let me go look that up and see
Mm-hmm.
what it's about because I like to know things, I like to understand things. But as a coach, I'm also really big on communication. And for effective communication to take place, like we have to be understanding each other.
Mhm,
Right.
mhm,
So
mhm.
it's not just about me knowing what I'm saying. It's also about making sure that the people I'm talking to are receiving what I'm saying in the way that I intend.
Yes.
And I just realized just through coaching, right? So this is something I picked up through my coaching experience that the best way to make sure that we're on the same page is for me to just go ahead and set the container, right? Let me
Mhm.
just give this a baseline so that we are all meaning the same thing and thinking the same thing when this word or this phrase comes up. And and I started calling them Coach Elizabeth definitions because I would occasionally find good things and good starting points in those, dictionary definitions.
Yeah.
But those dictionary definitions don't keep up with like the way we use terms in real life.
That's true.
Right?
That is
It
true.
doesn't.
Yes. Yeah.
And, there's always like buzzwords that, pop up in, the self-help and life coaching space, and the life and personality that those phrases take on, the way coaches use them and the way they're showing up in like the self-help blogosphere is very different than like what's in the dictionary. And so
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure that my definitions were speaking to all of that, but also sometimes I created definitions to almost turn things on their head, right? So like if folks were fixated on something in a way that wasn't actually helpful, and I think self-care is a really good example of
Yeah.
this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Listen, this isn't what you're thinking it is. So let me give you a whole different definition that just picks you up and points you in a different direction so that you can get focused on what actually matters.
Yep. Yep. No, I love that. I think you taking the time to like really like use your skills to like and bring that in your podcast and in your teachings, I think it's genius. Like that is like, I love your definitions.
Oh, I'm
I love
so
them. So
glad. Yeah.
yeah.
So some of the definitions that I gave were definitions that I have created like over time as I'm, working with my clients. So they were ones that I just kind of pulled out of my, repertoire. But others I was creating specifically for this season as I was taking a more focused, approach to them. So like, for example, self-care. I have been talking about self-care as a concept since I started coaching, but I had never taken the time to really define it for myself. So I was like, this is the perfect time to do that. Yeah. But like perfectionism, that's something that I've been talking about with my clients for a long time. So that's a definition that I gave my clients a while ago, but it's not a definition that I had spoken about publicly. And of course, given who this podcast is for, right? We're talking to overachievers, perfectionists, right? Like y'all need to know what it is that you're struggling with and why it's a problem.
Yep. 100%. Yeah.
Yep.
So I love that. I love that you did that. So, but outside of the Coach Elizabeth's definitions, my favorite concept that I loved, and you'll probably not be that surprised, but it was the one that you talked about, like when you use the analogy for taking out the head trash. That one with like the thought factory and all of that. Oh my gosh. I think I listened to that episode probably like 3 times.
Ooh.
Because it was very informative, and it was just a way that I hadn't thought about it before. And I think it can be a very complex type subject, right? So like listening to you talk about like the different roles of like the CEO and the manager, and how that, that whole thing, like, I guess like correlates to the way our brain works and the way our mind works and how we make decisions, and all of that was great. I loved your analogy for that.
I had so much fun with that. I'm actually going to say that episode, Taking Out the Head Trash, which is episode 8. It's episode 8, Taking Out the Head Trash. That is actually my favorite episode. That's my favorite episode of the season. And it's simply because I had so much fun, like with this concept. And as I was pulling it together, I was like, either I am doing way too much or this is brilliant.
Listen, it's probably both. It's probably a bit of both. And I'll tell you, like, I listened to it 3 times, and you know this, I've shared this with you. We talked about like the speed at which we listen to you on the podcast.
Oh gosh.
I normally listen, and this is not just you. It's my thing is set at 1.5. So everybody I listen to at 1.5. This one I had to slow down. I had to put it on I had to let it be on 1 and listen to it that way, because I was just like, wait a minute. This is genius. Like I had to like let it sink in, and I was like, yes, I love this. So yeah, no, I think that one was a good one. You were probably doing a lot.
I was.
And it was genius. It was.
I definitely spent more time than I planned on creating that episode, because once the analogy like pop came to me, I started creating what I thought was going to be simple, but
Yeah.
then it just got more and more layered, and I was like, "Ooh, this is good. Ooh, this is good." And apparently, I don't know how to hold back, so I'm just like, I'm gonna give the people the whole thing,
Yeah.
the way it's coming to me, and also I like to make sure that I'm explaining things in a way that makes sense. And I
Yes.
knew that it was going to be probably brand new to a lot of people who listen to my podcast, right?
Yeah.
Like you and I are coaches. And so we're used to kind of taking in concepts and being exposed to concepts that challenge the way we think, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of people that listen to my podcast, I think, are just regular people who are not
Yeah.
coaches. And which by the way is the point. If you're not a coach and you're just a regular person listening to me, thank you. I'm glad
Yes.
you're here. This is for you. And so I really wanted to create a concept that felt accessible, that everyone could understand, because it wasn't super steeped in all the jargon,
The
right,
coach
of
speak.
coaching. Oof, the coach
Yes.
speak, right?
Yes.
I didn't want to do all that. And I also didn't want it to sound too woo.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I also wanted to demonstrate that this is not just like theory and my perspective. Like, this is also about brain science. Like, this is just the way we're wired, right?
Yes.
So, and helping folks kind of harness the potential of like retraining your brain. There is a part of your physical anatomy that is sometimes working against you, and you can change that.
Yes. Yes. No, mission accomplished. I think it was very, very well thought out, very well explained, and I think very down to earth in a way that like regular people, right? Right. Just
Yeah.
regular people out here listening can understand without having to go and pull out a book and all the other
Yeah.
things to get it. So
Yeah.
yeah. Well
That's
done, friend.
super
Well
fun.
done.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm really, really curious, because you're a listener. And wait, by the way, let me just shout out to all of the listeners who have taken the time to leave me a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts.
Yes.
So, and also I'm going to shout out everyone who has ever sent me a DM on any of the social media channels to say, I listened to this episode and I really enjoyed it, or I listened to a couple of episodes and, it was helpful. Like, thank you so much for the feedback, because it's a one-way conversation. There's no likes on podcasts except for the
Right.
ratings, right? So I never really know what besides from looking at the numbers and like which episodes seem to be the most popular,
Yeah.
and how many plays they're getting. I never really know what's landing with you all unless y'all talk back to me. So I really appreciate everyone who takes the time to talk back to me, and make it a two-way conversation. Like, super, super helpful. Do more of that. Do more of that.
Yes, 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 yes. So how are people doing it? They're doing it through DMs.
Yeah, I've got
How are people doing it?
so I've had yes, a few people who are like following me on usually Instagram, but I've had some folks on Facebook send me private messages to say, oh, this episode was really good, or I
Nice.
enjoyed this, or even, I listened to a couple of episodes and, this helped me and it inspired me to do XYZ. I'm like,
Nice.
wow, that's amazing. That gives me the warm and fuzzies.
I love it.
I've also had a few folks share like in their stories and like a screenshot of them listening to a particular episode.
Yeah.
So, that is always amazing, because I'm like, oh, they're actually listening to this right now. And
Yeah.
they think highly enough to like share it with their audience or with their connections. I'm like, that's super dope.
Crazy to think about, right? Like that's
Th-
crazy to think about.
Amazing. Amazing.
Yeah. That's
And
awesome.
then also, like, so I share little clips, little snippets of every episode on Instagram, usually in my stories, but sometimes I make reels. Anytime someone like reshares one of those reels that's like a
Mm-hmm.
clip of my podcast, I'm super grateful for that, because that's another
Yeah.
way that they're just, helping me reach new listeners. And it's also showing me like which episodes they think other people should listen to.
Yes. 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 That I love it. I love
All
it.
of that super, super duper helpful. Yeah.
Awesome. Love it.
Yeah. Okay, so my question to you, since you are a listener, we get to have this two-way conversation right now. is there something that would be like on your wish list for season 2? Is there something that you want to see me talk or hear me talk about, or something that you wish I did with the podcast that I didn't do, or that you want me to do more of from season 1? Anything on your wish list?
Perfect segue into this right here. Speaking of like people leaving reviews and all of that, I'm trying to be a listener, babe, but also I don't have no iPhone.
Oh.
So I'm just trying to figure out how we non-iPhone, non-Apple users can be a listener, babe. Yeah, I'd like to see how that could happen.
Yes. Okay. I need to figure that out.
Okay.
So I think there's gotta be something that we can do over on Spotify for my
Something.
non-Apple
Yes.
listeners.
Because that's
Yes.
my favorite. Spotify is my jam. So that's where I'm listening. So I
Yeah.
can rate it, right? Like I've rated
Mhm.
it, but I'm like, I
Mhm.
can't leave a review. And so I can't
Hmm.
become a listener, babe.
Okay. So on Spotify, there is a way that, like, there's usually a Q&A part with
Okay.
every episode. So if you go in, I'll have to do screenshots and do step-by-step instructions for this. But you could actually go in and respond to an episode if there was something you really liked.
Okay.
Um, Maybe that's how you can be my listener, Bay, if you're
Yeah.
listening on Spotify.
Okay.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All
Okay.
right.
I'm gonna figure that out. I will figure that out.
Okay. Cause I
And
mean, I felt some type of way. It's kind of like not being on the close friends thing. I was like, well,
we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. Okay. Yes, I will figure that out. For all of my non-Apple listeners, I love y'all. Y'all can be my bae too. I will get y'all some step-by-step instructions for that ASAP. Okay.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you. And then the other thing would be like, um money, like your perspective
Mm.
on like money topics, money as it relates to, I don't know, perfectionism, like budget, whatever that looks like, that you find that your people struggle with. So like hearing your take on certain money things, money in the personal lives, money in business, all those things. So that was the other area.
That is super interesting. So as a coach, I'm what I refer to as a general life coach, right?
Mhm.
So my clients come to me and we can coach on anything that matters to them.
Yeah.
I have had very few clients come to me to work on money things, right?
Hmm.
Like money tends not to be the thing that is loud and hot in their life. It's everything else.
Yeah.
And even so, working on other things like their productivity or, their boundaries might help them with money.
Hmm.
So, okay, maybe I'll do like some polls on Instagram
Yeah.
and ask my community if they're interested in some money conversations for season 2. And if so, like, what questions do you have? How can I help? Because that would be really great. That'd be really great.
Yeah, no, that's a great way to kind of, poll your audience and see what they're interested in. I just find so people well, I'm a business mindset coach, so people do
Hmm.
come to me about money, but I think a lot of times it's a second thing, right? Like it
Hmm.
comes like the first thing is like signing clients, attracting client, get my messaging, things like that. But then money is the thing that happens like secondary. And
Yeah.
so, but even taking it a step further than that, it's like some of them come because again, you're a coach too, and I know you experience this. Like they come to you for one thing, but a lot of times, all different areas of life are impacted, right?
Yep.
So they're dealing with one thing, but I'm over here coaching you on, how to manage your money or how to think about your money and all of those types of things. So
Yes.
I don't know, maybe that is something that goes on for you with your clients. Like it might not be a direct thing, but maybe like indirectly, um, something that
Yeah.
comes up. So,
Yeah, that's actually a really good point. So, I've coached actually quite a few entrepreneurs
mhm,
or aspiring entrepreneurs.
yeah,
So money and finance is always wrapped up in there somewhere for sure.
yeah,
I'm
yeah,
gonna noodle on that a bit, and I'm gonna go look at some of my notes and things and see if there are any themes that I can pull out. That's really good. That's really
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Anything
yeah.
else? Anything else on your wish list?
I don't know. I don't think anything else is on my wish list, but one quick thing about one of the lessons that I learned,
Ooh, tell me, tell
I
me.
want to talk about that. I realized I've been doing self-care wrong. I've been
You're
doing
not
that
the only
wrong.
one. You're not the
First
only
of
one.
all, I didn't realize you gave those 8 categories of
Oh,
wellness.
yeah. Yes.
Financial wellness, speaking of money, had never even considered that as being a wellness category that I would be doing like self-care around.
Yep. That's one of the reasons that I started that conversation there is because there are so many ways that we neglect to care for ourselves. Like,
Mm,
especially for like high achievers, there
mhm.
tend to be certain areas of life that we focus on at the expense of everything else.
Yes. Yes. Yep.
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 And we can, and even when we're aware that there are multiple, elements of wellness,
Mhm.
sometimes we are really good at taking care of ourselves in certain ways, but we have work to do in others, right? So for example, we might be really good at, going to the gym and moving our body and eating well,
Mhm.
but maybe we're not so good at drawing boundaries with, people and in our interpersonal relationships, right?
Yes.
So those are things that I wanted to create an aha moment for my
Mhm.
folks that are listening to
Oh,
say,
I
"Oh,
had
snap."
one, honey. I had one. I had like 3 in that episode where you talked about doing it wrong, like,
Hmm.
where you may be doing self-care wrong. Um, give the people the number for that one because
Oh,
I don't.
yes. That is episode 12. Episode
12.
12.
Okay. Yes, because I think to your point, like I have my things that I do, like working out, reading, like things that are important to me. But I think it was under the category of like being too narrow, where I
Hmm.
wasn't, I'm a creature of habit, right? So I'll just go and do and all that kind of thing, but I'm not stopping to do what you suggested with it, which is like check in to see, like, does my body need a workout right now? Is that what my body asking for right now? Or is it asking for like a day of rest? I
Yeah.
don't even stop to check in to say, like, what is it that you need right now? Just
Yes.
me in general. Like you mentioned that like the self-care, like we go through phases. So we need different things at different points of our lives. And I don't know that I've ever even checked in to really see. Um, I just find something that works, or at least that I thought was working, and just keep
Uh-huh.
going
Uh-huh.
with it.
And
So
I think that's a really intuitive thing to do, especially for a
yeah.
lot of people. And for people who have a lot going on, right?
Hmm.
If you can set it and forget it, that tends to
Yes,
be part of your recipe for success, right?
that's exactly it.
So yeah, that makes sense. And that can be really helpful when you're trying to build habits, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And when you're trying to start certain types of changes. And that's not enough to account for the ways that we change and evolve as people, right? So
Yeah.
and let's just take the example of working out.
Hmm.
The way you work out in your 20s is probably
Hmm.
different than the way you'll work out in your 30s, is
True.
probably different than the way you'll work out in your 40s,
Yep.
right?
Yeah.
Um, uh, I follow this one fitness influencer on Instagram, Lita the Great. Do you know her?
Mm-mm, mm-mm,
Oh my gosh,
mm-mm.
Black woman, amazing. She's beautiful. She has her own like line of fitness apparel. But this woman has had like 2 babies in the last 3 years. And she's also like the kind of woman where like her physique, she's not about trying to be as slim as possible, right? Like she's owning her curves. I think one of
Yeah.
her phrases like thick thighs save lives, right?
Yeah, girl.
She's into that, yes, right?
Yeah.
And so like she has been very transparent with like how her body has changed and evolved, like what her body looked like when she was at her physical peak and like really competing or doing certain types of things versus the way she shifted her life when the pandemic started, right?
Yeah.
And she wasn't doing the same type of workouts and not going to the same types of places. And kind of how her body softened a little bit, and she was really leaning into that, and using that. And then when she had her first child, her workouts, she made sure she kept up with everything, but allowing the nature of her workouts to evolve, based on how her body was literally changing over those 9 months.
Yeah.
And then what fitness looks like when you're recovering from childbirth and all of that, right? And then she got pregnant with her second child, while her first child, I think, is still in diapers, right? So now she's got these two babies, two under two, right? And, so she has just been very transparent that, like, even as a fitness professional, like what she did, a year ago is not the same thing she's doing now because
Yes.
it needs to evolve.
Yes.
And so, and the best thing we can do is give ourselves what it is that we actually need, not
Yes.
just what we think we should be doing.
Yes. No. Yeah. And I think that's a good point. It's really like being intentional about even asking ourselves and just not going with what we've always done. So I think
Yeah.
that was great. That was an aha moment. And the other aha moment in that same episode was around like the whole you can't pour from an empty cup kind of thing. Because that's the way
Mm-hmm.
I always saw self-care. I always saw it as something that I should do so that I could
Mm-hmm.
show up better for other people.
Mm-hmm.
Never even, I'm like,
Listen, this is one of my biggest pet peeves with the whole conversation around self-care as
yeah,
directed to women.
yeah,
It's always this message that you take care of yourself so that you can be a good
yes,
mom. Take care
yes,
of yourself so that you have more energy to support your husband. Take care of yourself so that you can be good at your job. But how about, like, you just get to be okay and it doesn't have to serve a function for anybody else?
yes. No,
Like,
I I'm right there with you. Just had never considered it because we get
yes,
so much of that like
yes,
thrown at us, so much of that thrown at us. And so
yes.
I'm so glad that is something you like put on its head for me. You talking
Hmm.
about like taking a definition and spinning it on its head. Like
Yeah,
that's what you did for me with this conversation. Cause I was just like, I had not even considered it from that perspective. So
yeah,
thank you.
yeah.
Yeah, that was my biggest lesson learned from this season, I think.
That's so good. So I guess this is a good time to talk about what's going to happen between seasons and
Yes.
maybe my outlook for season two.
Let us know what's coming up.
Yeah. Okay. So I just want to make it abundantly clear, even though this is the last episode of season one, um, the podcast is not going away. There is going to be fresh content published on this podcast every week up until season two starts. So y'all stay subscribed. You're gonna keep getting new episodes auto magically. The episodes are still gonna be dropping on Wednesdays, right? So that is what's happening. But here is what I'm doing. So I am going to take a little break, right? So I am not going to do full episodes the way I've been doing, but instead I am going to repurpose and repackage some of the live stream videos that I've done on Instagram and Facebook in the past. So y'all, I have been at this coaching thing for almost 6 years. I kept saying 5 years, not realizing that time keeps going by. So it's actually 6 years. I've been at this coaching thing for 6 years. And so I have an entire library of live
Mm,
streams, both on Facebook and Instagram. If y'all are not following me on social media, get your whole life together.
I'm
Life
telling
Edit
you.
Project, right? Like, keep it easy. Life Edit Project, all one word. Go follow me. Um, so I've got libraries of videos there. And I don't think all of them are necessarily relevant to this podcast, but I've got some topics that I think are going to be so good. I'm going to start off with kind of a series that I did over on Instagram where I share my coaching philosophy.
Oh, cool.
I'm very excited to share those conversations here on the podcast because there are, I think, certain things that I just haven't gotten into because I've been so focused on making each episode kind of a teachable moment
Mm-hmm.
that I haven't been focused on why I'm even coming at it with this angle. And I think I really want to remind y'all that I'm a coach, right? I'm not just a podcaster. I'm
Yeah.
podcasting because I'm a coach.
Yeah.
And my relationship with my coaching clients is a bit different than just how I show up here on the podcast. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that series is going to help y'all get to know who I am as a coach and kind of what my orientation is. And of course, if any of you decide to work with me going forward, what you can expect in our relationship. So I'm excited to bring that to you all. We got a
So
couple
what you
of
saying is, let me just be clear. So
yes.
what you saying is you're gonna show us how you ain't one of our little friends. You're gonna show us from that angle.
Yes, that too. That too.
I
I'm not
love
one of your
that.
little friends. I'm better than one of your little friends. I'm your coach. Yes.
I'm your coach. I love it. I love it. Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. So I'm excited for that. I'm going to be sharing a couple of podcast interviews that I've done on some other shows.
Yeah.
So I've kind of been quietly making guest appearances on other podcasts in the past year or so, and some of those conversations I think will be really good for this audience.
Mm.
And I think I get a chance to talk differently about my work when someone else is asking the questions.
Yeah.
So I'm going to bring a couple of those conversations over here to this audience too. And yeah, so we're gonna take all of this. So the postseason, I'm calling it the postseason. Listen, I don't know if anybody else calls the time between season 1 and season 2 the postseason in the podcast world, but that's what we doing over here.
Yeah. I like it. I like it.
It's the postseason. So the postseason will start next week. So y'all will be listening to this like mid-October, this episode. So the postseason will start, the week after that, and will take us through the end of the year and actually into the first week of 2024. And so season 2 will start the second Wednesday of January. That is when episode 1 of season 2 is going to drop.
Awesome.
Yes. So
Awesome.
that's a
Yay.
12-week postseason. And that's going to give me some time to figure out what I'm doing for season 2. Because the short answer is I don't know. I don't know
Yeah.
yet.
Figuring it out. Figuring it out. That's what we do. We figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love it. I
Yeah.
love it. And
Yeah.
also giving yourself a break. This is you with your taking your own advice, right?
Yes.
Self-care, giving yourself a
Yep.
break and figuring out what
Yep.
you need next.
Yep. One thing I know for sure is that the end of the year gets really, it feels really full for me. So we've got, of course, the holiday season, right?
Yeah.
So November and December. Y'all, I love holidays. I love me
Me
some Thanksgiving.
too.
I love me some Christmas. Nobody better to say nothing about no Christmas. I love me some Christmas.
Yes.
And like as I've gotten older with my little family, I'm doing more of the cooking on these holidays.
Oh, really?
Oh
See, I ain't
yes.
doing that. I ain't doing all that. Like I love it, but I love to like just show up. I love to
Yes.
just show up. I don't cook. So you cook
Yes.
a whole do you cook a whole meal?
I don't have to cook a whole meal because fortunately my husband and I, we both live, like 10 minutes away from our respective families. So my husband and I are, born and raised in the same town, Delray Beach, Florida. Shout out Delray. And yeah. And so his family is still in Delray. My family is still in Delray. So we house hop for the holidays, so there's other folks around that are also still cooking, but
Okay.
I have to show up to both houses with
Yeah.
some of the food I'm contributing. So
Oh,
yeah.
gotcha.
And I'm
Gotcha.
doing some
Oh,
of the main dishes. So like last year I did the dressing for
the
ooh,
main dish. What are you talking about? The
honey.
main dish. I
Mm.
love it. Okay. Okay.
Also macaroni and cheese. That's mine.
That's my favorite.
Yes,
That's my
it's delicious.
absolute favorite, mac and cheese.
Yes,
Mhm.
yes. And then yeah, I make a mean cheesecake from scratch.
Shut up. Let me find out I need to come down to Delray Beach down there to for Thanksgiving. Let me
Listen,
find out. But that
yes.
is such a blessing that y'all are in the same area. My husband and I
Mm-hmm.
are blessed in the same way where, we don't have to do all that traveling for the holidays. Like
Mm-hmm.
we're able to go to each other's in the
I
same
love it.
day and
Yes, I
all of
love it.
that.
It's
So it's
like
great.
the more family, the more better.
Yep, yep. 100% agree. 100%
Yeah.
agree. Okay.
So, but also my husband's birthday is very close to Thanksgiving. My birthday is usually, a few days to a week after Thanksgiving. So,
Wait, when's your birthday?
December 1st.
Oh, so you're sad. You're like 3 days after mine. I'm November 28th.
Okay. So you have the same birthday as my oldest sister.
Oh,
How
cool.
fun.
That
How
is fun. That is
fun.
fun. Yeah, so that is a busy time.
Yeah.
Busy time. So I understand.
Yeah, it's busy time of
Yeah.
year. And I've just learned over time that trying to start up new things, trying to ramp up in
Mm,
the October, November, December season
yeah.
is setting myself up for failure.
Yeah. Listen, that's
So
what it's all about. We
that's
live and
not
we
what we doing
learn.
over here. That's not what
Mhm.
we doing over here. Yes. So I'll be back for season 2 with lots of fresh, ideas, fresh episodes, and maybe I'll change things up. Ooh, okay. So one thing that I am excited for in season 2, we gonna get some new theme music.
Oh.
Yes, yes.
Oh.
So, okay, so fun fact, I'm a musical person, so I love music.
Me
So
too.
I made a big deal. Like I spent probably more time than I needed to trying to pick the perfect like intro music
But
that
let
worked
me
for the
tell you, I have to tell you though, like I live for listening to at the end when it goes
yeah.
out and then the music stops
And then it
and then
comes
it comes
back.
back. It's like, yes.
Yes. Thank you. I'm so glad
Yes.
somebody else is enjoying that. I
Oh
did
no.
that just for me because I was like, I like that. Like, I love podcasts that have little musical
Yes.
interludes and intros and outros. Like, I enjoy that. So I was like, I'm
Yeah.
putting it in my podcast.
I
I
love
don't
it.
know if people fast forward through it or what, but I enjoy it. So it's in there.
No, I wait for it. I wait for that because I got to hear the
Excellent.
beat drop and come back in again. I'm just
That
like,
makes me so happy. So we're gonna get some new music for season
okay,
2. So that's
okay,
gonna be fun. I promise it's going to be as enjoyable.
nice.
Yes. Yes, it's gonna be a little groove. Yes, very excited about that. And I don't know. I don't know what I'll talk about. I may have a couple of guests. I might not do, all solo episodes. I might have a couple of guests, but it's still going to mostly be me talking
Mhm, mhm,
because
mhm.
it's my show.
Yeah. Well, you kind of touched on this. You kind of touched on this a minute ago, but like, what have you found to be the most fun thing about podcasting in this process,
I think the
other than the music?
most, right, other than the music, I think the most fun has been, okay, I'm going to sound like a nerd, checking my analytics and just seeing the numbers go up, like seeing
Yeah.
that there's more and more people coming and listening
Mhm.
every week.
Yes.
That's so fun. Like, and I don't know what the numbers say of like if it's good or bad. I just know that more people are showing up and more
Yeah.
people are listening, more people are following, and I'm like, that is so fun to know that what I'm putting out there is impacting people enough that they're like, I would like to get this episode every week.
Yes,
That's
yes, because that's
fun.
what that means. It's like you get to watch your level of impact increase.
Yeah, yeah. So that's
Awesome.
been super fun.
Okay.
I think I don't really enjoy like the editing. That's not actually
Mm,
fun for me. But I
mm,
am proud of like the product, the quality of the podcast.
mhm, mhm.
Um, because I'm doing this whole thing myself. So I don't know if people know that. I don't know if I've ever said that. So there are podcast managers that you can hire, podcast
Yeah.
editors that you can hire. I do this whole thing start to finish by myself. So I am creating the concepts for the episode. I'm editing it. I did the music. I do all the transitions. I publish it. Like I do the snippets. Like I am doing the entire thing all by my lonesome. And so I'm super proud of that.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So what would you say has been the most surprising success?
Most surprising. Again, I'm going to say the quality of the audio that I've been able to get because
Yes, yes, that's so true.
because episodes like 1 through 18, yeah, 1 through 17, I recorded in what I call my home studio, which is my bedroom closet. And I do not use any fancy equipment. I am literally sitting there talking into my phone. Not a fancy
Surrounded by
podcast
clothes.
surrounded by clothes and blankets,
Yeah.
and like looking like trying to get as comfortable as possible, trying not to jingle my little bracelets so that they don't like, it's literally me sitting there in my closet. And the fact that the quality of the audio, it still sounds pretty
It
professional.
does.
Yeah, I'm like, hey girl, you did
I,
that.
I, I think, and I want to go back. I'm going to go back and do a comparison between those because I don't know that I noticed a big difference.
So I think episode 1, actually, okay, I recorded kind of like this, like talking into my computer. So episode 1 is a little different. And
Mhm.
I think there's a big difference in the sound quality between episode 1 and episode 2.
Okay.
And then episode 11 with my husband, like I said, we did that at the dining room table because we weren't both going to fit in our closet.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
the episode I did with my daughter, she was like, I want to come into the podcast studio closet. So
Yeah.
we were in the closet for that one. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. But I want to
Hilarious.
hear the difference in the one in your closet and the one in the recording studio.
Yeah. So oh no, wait, episodes 19 and 20, because this is episode 21. Episodes 19 and 20, I recorded at a professional recording studio.
Okay.
So yeah, episode 2 through 18.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna go
Yeah.
listen. I'm gonna go listen. I don't
Interesting.
know. I don't know. But that's awesome. Yeah. I mean, it sounds amazing. It sounds great.
Hmm.
All of them have sound great. I remember the first one I could tell, that you but
Just
after
starting.
that,
Yeah.
yeah. But after
Yeah.
that it was sound very professional. So good. What about a fail? Fabulous fail.
Oh my gosh. So I never said this, but I always told myself, okay, these episodes are going to go live on Wednesdays. And I wanted to have everything done on Tuesday so that every episode could auto publish on Wednesday morning.
Mm-hmm.
And that only happened, I don't maybe not even half the time. So I never missed a Wednesday. So every single episode has shown up online on Wednesday, but I think the latest was maybe like noon, right? So I've been timely-ish.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, I didn't get myself to a point where I was truly ready to have everything like scheduled out in advance and ready to go. So I don't think anyone cared. Nobody was calling me complaining, but that for me, that was a standard that I never got to. That I wish I had. But then the other things, there was one episode, I don't remember which number, maybe nobody noticed. I messed something up with the editing, and I had published this episode,
Mhm.
and I don't know what I did, but there ended up being like this 10 or 15-minute blankness in the episode. Oh, yes, like there were minutes of just blank noise in this episode. And it was like between one of the little interludes or something and when I
Mhm.
started talking again, and there was just nothing. And one thing I always do is even after I publish the episode and I think I've edited, I always pull it up through my podcast player and I always listen to it myself.
Yeah.
And that's how I caught the mistake. And so I had to like go back and re-edit the episode and like find the mistake and trim out that blank space and then re-upload and republish the episode.
Oh, okay. Because I'm like, I don't remember that. Okay, so you probably fixed it before we had a chance to listen
So I
to
have no idea if anybody caught it because I think it was up for some hours. Like it was
it.
it
Okay.
was one of those episodes that I had published like auto published at like 6 in the morning, and I
Okay.
didn't listen to it until like 10 a.m. And I was like, oh, maybe somebody else already heard this, but I'm gonna change it now.
Okay.
So,
Okay. Okay.
yeah, that happened, but I fixed it.
Yeah, you fixed it. It happens pretty quickly too then. I mean, just a matter of a couple hours. Okay, so we kind of like touched on this for the most part, but like when we talk about like the behind the scenes, any like other behind the scenes intel, we know about your blanketed recording
Closet,
studio.
yes. Um, you know, I think, oh, okay, so here's something. For the most part, I script out my podcast episodes.
Mhm.
So I literally write out what I'm saying and then I read it. And I do a
Okay.
little bit of ad libbing because I can't help myself, but I'm not just winging it. So if some things sound really polished, it's because I've taken the time to really polish them. And
Mhm.
so, yeah, I know that different podcasters have different ways of setting themselves up. And maybe I won't do it that way forever. I do hope that I kind of develop my podcast voice and I don't have to fully script things out forever.
Yeah.
But that's where I've landed so far. And that's when I feel like I get the best results for the
Mhm.
show.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I love that. I love that. Like you basically found what works for you and you stick to it. And it's working. I love it.
And it's working. So we'll see what changes for episode 2 beyond that.
Season 2, yes.
Oh yes,
Season
season
2.
2.
Season 2 coming up in a couple months.
January.
Love it. Okay.
All right,
Okay.
Gabrielle, tell the people where they can find you, what you do, who you serve, and then we'll link you up in the show notes.
Okay. Yes. So I serve coaches who are in niche drama. So I help coaches get out of niche drama so that they can attract their aligned ideal clients. And I am the thought trainer all over the place. So the thought trainer on Instagram, Facebook, all the
All the
social media
places.
channels. Yes, and my website thethoughttrainer.com. So, yeah.
Beautiful. We will link you up.
Yes.
And of course, I'm your host, Elizabeth Burrows. Thank you for joining me here on the Life Edit Project podcast. You can find me in all the places on social media at the Life Edit. No, Life Edit Project, not the Life Edit Project. And my website is also lifeeditproject.com. And everything will be linked up in the show notes as always. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. I appreciate y'all, and we'll catch you in season 2. But stick around for the postseason because I ain't going nowhere.
Yes. 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 Yes.
Peace.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of the Life Edit Project podcast. I'd love to hear what your favorite moment or key takeaway was from this conversation. You can send me a message on Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter to let me know. My handle is at Life Edit Project, all one word, in all the places. My social media is linked up in the show notes to make it easy for you. Holla at your girl. I'll be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, don't just stay busy with the life you have, get busy creating the life you want.